Hey guys, Sax here. If you've been on my channel for any amount of time, whether it's Destiny 2 or Destiny Rising, you probably know that I love exotic weapons. You guys also show a ton of interest in exotic weapons, and so I think that's why we get along so well, and I appreciate you being here. Recently, I asked my YouTube community what the most desirable exotic weapons in Destiny Rising were, and the turnout of votes over the 4 different categories that we had was amazing. We had almost 9,000 total votes. And so if you guys took part in that, thank you very much. Let's get into the results. I want to talk about it today. So the first category we had were exotic weapons that can come from strike missions. We have Concerto, we have Polaris Lance, we have Borealis, we have Two-Tailed Fox, and finally we have Risk Runner. Now for full transparency, I could only put 4 per round. And so I had to make a decision based on usage, based on the characters that were meta. So Two-Tailed Fox was not included. So the 4 that were included were Concerto, Polaris Lance, Borealis, and Risk Runner. And by far taking the cake for the strike engrams was Concerto with 54% of the 2.3 thousand votes that were cast for this category. Next was Polaris Lance with 26%. Next, we had Borealis with 12%, and finally we had Risk Runner with 8%. Now, let's talk a little bit about why we think this is. Concerto, honestly, it's one of the most unique exotics. Obviously, these are a pair of guns, but exotic weapons we have in the game. And not only are they unique, but also the fact that they provide such a boon to Gwen's kit when it comes to raw DPS, right? You get the shots, you get the kills with Concerto, and then you swap to the Shoddy, and you can just go absolutely insane. And then following right after that, we have Polaris Lance for Tan 2. Polaris is an incredible weapon and also a powerhouse in PvP, so don't sleep on Polaris Lance. Borealis and Risk Runner sat down pretty low. I think both of them have their use cases, and Risk Runner really shines on Ning, but we're going to talk about why Risk Runner is so low for Ning here in just a moment. So next, we talked about the Adventurer exotics. So these are weapons like Sweet Business, Huckleberry, Chaperone, the Smart Bomb, and then finally Crimson. And so we put these on here. The one weapon that did not make the cut, because again, we have 5, we can only have 4 options on the YouTube polls, was Chaperone. Chaperone did not make it in this round. I put on the polls that people could vote for them if they wanted to down in the comment section, but very few did. Some people just said rip to whatever exotic we were talking about. For this option, between the 4 of these, we had Satya Elixir Smart Bomb with 56% of the vote, 1.8k votes. For this category, we had 56% going to Smart Bomb, 25% going to Huckleberry. Yoder fans out there are lamenting the fact that the Smart Bomb edged it out, and then we had a tight run for 3rd and 4th place with Sweet Business at 10% and Crimson at 9%. If you're not aware, Smart Bomb allows you to convert your super into just free ammo, free heavy ammo, and the fact that we're about to go into Season of the Moor and have Maru entered into the game, the Smart Bomb will be accessible on Maru. So being able to turn her super, if that super, finds lacking, or you need something where you can do arc damage with Maru, this could be a good option for you. So let's go into the next round. The next round to follow were weapons that could come from Gauntlet Blitz. So these are Izanagi's Burden, Royal Contravene, Jotun, Heir Apparent, and the Old Prefect. Out of these 5, the one that had to sit out was Old Prefect. I think we all know why, but it's just a little uninspiring. Out of them, Jotun was really close. They both kind of sit low. This is kind of a 3-horse race here. And out of this category here, the top voted was Royal Contravene for Hellhest and Natal, 58% of the vote. And then next we had Izanagi's Burden with 28%, Heir Apparent with 9%. Now, note, this did come out before the Heir Apparent buff that took place a couple weeks ago. And then finally we had at 6%, we had Jotun with Zhuan Wei. I would assume Old Prefect may have even been lower than that. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, this may be the least surprising category. However, we get into the Gauntlet Onslaught exotics. We have the Mahamayuri Auto Crossbow. We have the Octant Riot Disperser. And finally, we have Gallows, the Gallows machine gun. So let's just remember real quick. Mahamayuri can be used on both Ningfei and now Rossi 11. And it also comes from probably the most accessible Possibly. Most accessible raid encounter, right? So you get 3 attempts every week with a 15% drop chance. Get in there, do the break-in encounter. We have Octet Riot Disperser here that can, is just a powerhouse shotgun on Gwen and Zhuan. And then finally, we have Gallows, which can be used on both Estella and Kabir, and can honestly, with its ability to kind of have these projectiles, these blasts that come off of your shots, can handle a lot of different Shinka types. And so it's a very, very effective weapon. And so let's look now, probably most notably and most surprising for me, how wide of a victory it was, with 80% of the 2.1K votes that went in. Maha Mayuri wins in a absolute landslide. Following that, we had Gallows with 16%. And finally, we had Octet Riot Disperser with only 4% of the vote. Guys, it cannot be overstated how good Maha Mayuri is right now. You do not have to worry in any capacity about any shield. You hardly have to worry at all about any Shinka. Basically, if you can get Chain Lightning going, especially if you can get to the higher Catalyst bands, man, you can just shred anything and everything that would come across your screen. So it is by far the strongest exotic in the game. And I think it shows from these polls, right? It shows from these polls what people say. This is by far the clearest. Now, there's not a fourth option from Gauntlet Onslaught that could split the vote here. So let's say that steals a couple of percentage points. If they had something else in there, that's still going to be north of 70, 75% probably taking that. Gallows there, I think Gallows is better than it's showing. I think if Gallows was in any other category, Gallows would immediately win. But Maha Mayuri is that much better. So guys, let me know what you think about this. I like doing these little community interaction pieces. This is you guys telling me, right? You're telling me, you're telling the world what you guys think. So just one more reminder, we had Concerto from the Strike playlist. Next, we had, just from the Adventure engrams, we had the Smart Bomb, which, again, another reason Smart Bomb might be, persisting and raising up in the ranks is everyone has one. Everyone has had one in hand. Everyone has used one if you've played through the campaign. And so that would raise that up. Next, we had Royal Contravene. This taking place in the midst of, Hellhest, the back half of Season of Daybreak with Hellhest. That may have skewed things a little bit, but still a 30% margin between Royal Contravene and Izanagi's Burden. That's pretty wild. It goes to show that a really juiced up Royal Contravene is pretty impressive. And then finally, Maha Mayuri. So guys, if you're leaning into any of these characters, if you're considering building into any of these, take this into consideration. And until next time, be blessed, y'all.